Everyone walks out of Obsession arguing about the same two people. Either Bear is the monster, the lonely guy who magically forced the girl to love him, or Nikki is the monster, the thing wearing her face that cooks a man's cat and starts putting bodies on the floor. Both of those reads are right enough that almost nobody bothers to look at the third person standing in that friend group, the one with the cleanest shot at stopping all of it, the one who, when he was literally handed a wish that could have undone the entire nightmare, used it to make himself a billionaire. Ian never cast a single wish that hurt anyone, and I think he's the most dangerous person in the movie. Because the horror in Obsession doesn't actually start with a broken toy. It starts with a lie that Bear's best friend has been quietly telling him long before any magic showed up. And once you see Ian for what he is, the film stops being a story about a curse and becomes a story about the friend who stood next to it and let it burn. I love this movie, and I've watched it more times than is healthy. The first few times, I did exactly what you probably did. Bear made me sick, and I was terrified of Nikki. Then there's a rewatch where your attention drifts off the two obvious monsters and lands on the guy cracking jokes in the background. And you can't unsee what he is actually doing in every scene he's in. So take a seat. Today, we are not here for Bear's wish or Nikki's possession. We are here for Ian, the best friend, and the case that he is the true villain of Obsession. The movie shows you three things about him, and each one is uglier than the one before it. On the surface, Ian is the most likable person in the film. He's the comic relief, the buddy, the easy hang, and he's played by Cooper Tomlinson, who in real life makes comedy with Curry Barker on their channel called That's a Bad Idea. So he walks in with this built-in warmth. He feels like the friend you'd actually want around. He's also the designated voice of reason. When Bear starts spiraling over Nikki, Ian is the one going, "Slow down, man, ease up," and the film lets you file that under good friend keeping a lonely guy from humiliating himself. That is the whole trick. A voice of reason is only worth anything if the voice is honest. And Ian is sitting on this single piece of information that would detonate Bear's entire fantasy, and he puts it on the table. There's a name for what Ian is doing, and it comes straight out of evolutionary psychology. David Buss built a career studying how people compete for partners, and he describes a behavior called intrasexual deception. In plain terms, it's misleading a same-sex rival to protect your own shot at someone. And the most effective version of it isn't an outright lie. It's withholding. You simply never mention the fact that would level the field. Ian knows precisely how Bear feels about Nikki, because he has heard it 100 times. Ian has also already slept with Nikki. He just never says the words out loud. Buss has a second term that fits even tighter: mate poaching. Going after someone a friend openly wants. Ian doesn't just poach. He poaches, hides it, and then appoints himself the trusted advisor on the very person he's hiding. If you have ever opened a relationship forum online, you have read this exact horror story 100 times. The one where someone discovers months later that the friend they confided in had already slept with their crush and just let them keep talking. It is one of the most common betrayals people describe, and it lands so hard precisely because it doesn't look like an attack. It looks like friendship right up until you find out. And here's where it gets really dark, because that silence is not some passive oversight. It is a choice he keeps making, scene after scene. Watch how he operates once you know the secret. Every time Ian plays the grounded friend talking Bear off a ledge, he is protecting himself, not Bear. He gets to look wise and loyal and safe, all while making sure Bear never gets close enough to Nikki to stumble into the truth. This is the part I had to rewind a few times, because it flips completely on the second watch. The advice that reads as friendship the first time is really just a man quietly managing his own exposure. And look at what that silence lets loose, because Bear never gets the truth. He reaches for the willow, and the wish turns Nikki into something that watches him while he sleeps, that cooks his cat Sandy and feeds the remains to him, that eventually murders Sarah for the crime of sitting in a car with him. Every grotesque, unwatchable thing in the back half of this movie grows out of a wish that Bear only makes because the fantasy was still intact. And the fantasy was still intact because the one person who could have punctured it decided not to. Then there's the confession problem, which is the engine of the entire film. Bear's whole strategy is that he cannot say 3 honest words to the person he loves. He is so terrified of being seen and rejected that he reaches for a cursed shortcut instead of a conversation. And the one human being he trusts with all that fear is the exact person who could have ended the fantasy with a single sentence. Think about Bear actually hearing it. Nikki already slept with Ian. She is a whole person with a history that has nothing to do with you or your idea of her. That is not a fun thing to hear. It is also the truth that pops the bubble before the bubble can curdle into a wish. Ian chose to let that bubble keep growing. And the movie keeps catching him in the smaller version of the same move. He treats Bear's feelings like material, something to riff on at the bar, never something to actually sit inside with him. There's a reason it isn't Ian who finally says the quiet part out loud. It's Sarah, the other friend in the group, the one who has her own feelings for Bear, who ends up being the one to surface the thing about Ian and Nikki. Let that land for a second. It takes the person with an actual crush on Bear to give him a piece of honesty. His best friend never does. So when people sit around arguing about who is responsible for the carnage in this movie, run the list with me. Bear made a selfish, cowardly wish because he was drowning in loneliness. Nikki, the moment that wish takes hold, is not even herself anymore. She is a body being driven by whatever the willow let through the door. The willow is a cursed object behaving exactly like a cursed object is supposed to. And then there's Ian, who had no curse on him, no entity in his head, no magic forcing his hand, and who chose himself anyway, every single time he had the chance not to. Which brings me to the scene that ends the argument for me. Bear finally cracks the logic of the thing. The willow grants a wish, so maybe another willow can take one back, and he goes to Ian, frantic, begging him to snap one and reverse what is happening to Nikki. This is the exit door. This is the one moment where the whole nightmare could quietly close and everyone could walk away, and Ian doesn't believe him. He thinks Bear has completely lost the plot, so he snaps the willow and sarcastically wishes for $1 billion, and then the money rains down around him. Sit in that for a second with me. He is handed the only tool in the entire film that could save Nikki, save Sarah, save Bear, and save his own life, and he spends it on cash. The magic is real. The proof is literally falling out of the sky into his shoulders, and his first instinct still isn't, oh my god, Bear was telling the truth, let's undo this. It's get mine. He wanders back in later, flush with all that money, still treating the whole thing like a joke he's in on, and that is when the possessed Nikki shoots him in the face. He dies rich and useless, which might be the most honest sentence this movie writes about anyone. And here is why Ian crawls under my skin more than any of the supernatural stuff. He is a real type, and you have met him. The research on this keeps landing in the same place. Young men right now report fewer close friendships than any group we have data on, and a striking share say they have nobody they can truly open up to. Surveys from Pew and the American Perspective's work on loneliness keep sketching the same portrait. A lot of guys surrounded by people and connected to none of them. Bear is that statistic with a face, and Ian is a big part of why the statistic stays true. He is the friend who shows up for the bar crawl and the inside jokes and then evaporates the instant you need something real from him. We have a whole catalog of this character, by the way. We just usually code them as comedy. Think of the friend in Mean Girls who smiles in your face and undermines you the second you turn around. Or every rom-com buddy who laughs off the lead's feelings instead of telling them a hard truth. Pop culture is stuffed with the false best friend, the one who performs loyalty while quietly protecting their own position. And we tend to forgive the male version because he's funny and he buys around. Ian is that archetype, with the volume cranked all the way up, because his secret isn't petty. His secret is the exact thing that could have saved his friend's life. There's a darker layer underneath that too. Sociologists who study male friendship keep pointing out that a lot of these bonds are built on activity and banter, on doing stuff side by side, and almost never an actual disclosure. So when real feeling shows up, it gets deflected with a joke or a "that's cringe, man," because the friendship was never built to hold anything heavier. And inside that dynamic, sleeping with the girl your friend is obsessed with and saying nothing isn't just a betrayal. For a certain kind of guy, it's a private trophy. I know I could have her, and you never will. There's a whole online world, the manosphere stuff, that takes lonely men like Bear and tells them the enemy is women, and they are owed affection they aren't getting. Critics have already tied obsession to exactly that ecosystem. But the movie, if you actually watch what it shows you, is making a quieter and braver argument. Bear's problem was never Nikki. It was that the one man he trusted treated his loneliness like content instead of a crisis. I want to be clear about what I am and am not saying. The film never hands you an interview where Curry Baker calls Ian the villain. This is a reading, but it is a reading the movie keeps feeding you on purpose. In the hookup it hides until late, in the advice that curdles on a rewatch, in a wish for $1 billion while his friend begs for help. Plenty of people who have sat with this film have landed in the same spot, calling Ian the secret villain of the whole thing. I think they're right. So when the credits roll and you're still rattling by the cat and the pills and the thing that used to be Nikki, hold on to who moved through that entire story with a clear head and clean hands. Bear built a monster out of his own fear. Nikki never got a vote in any of it. Ian saw a friend going under, knew the one thing that might have pulled him back to shore, and decided his own comfort was worth more than the truth. He didn't need a cursed willow to wreck Bear's life. He just had to keep smiling and keep his mouth shut. That's the part of the movie I can't put down. The supernatural stuff isn't real. Ian is. You've probably got one in your life right now.